4 o'clock. Welcome to Ask a Collaborative Professional. I'm Jenny Weeks, and I'll be your moderator today. The goal of our webinar is to provide valuable information to anyone contemplating or in the middle of separation and divorce, and also those professionals and advocates who are working with these families. More specifically, we're discussing an alternative to litigation using a legal process called collaborative divorce. At each of these webinars, participants have an opportunity to participate by asking questions through our chat function. Your identity remains confidential. And all of these webinars will be available on our YouTube channel. Please go and like or follow our YouTube channel. And you can also find links to this on our website, Collaborative Divorce BC. Please share these resources with others. Today, we have Renee le Nobel, whose role in the collaborative process is as a financial neutral. So welcome, Renee.
Thank you.
A further introduction to Renee, she has training as both a scientist and an accountant, a collaborative practitioner, and she's also a mom. She's an advocate for individuals navigating life transitions. She's lived an experience of her own in collaborative divorce and has had 9 years of building her business as a financial specialist in the collaborative process, while also juggling being a full-time co-parent to her 2 sons. She's the outgoing co-chair of our Collaborative Divorce Vancouver practice group and has served on the board for 7 years. Through her journey, Renee noticed a disconnect between the stated desired outcome of family law, emotionally, mentally, and financially healthy individuals and families, and traditional family law process that increases conflict and leads to worse outcomes for individuals, families, and children. She is here today to clarify the role of a financial specialist in the collaborative approach to separation and divorce and share her experience working with couples in the collaborative process. She hopes that one day, instead of individuals and families having to luck into a better separation process, that we continue to transform the family law system, and individuals and families will get the emotional, financial, and legal support they need to navigate this incredibly significant life transition. So welcome, Renee.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yes.
Any opportunity to talk about collaborative, I'm there.
So let's just start with the simple stuff. In your words, what is a collaborative process?
Okay, so a collaborative process is a team-based approach designed to be inclusive, equitable, and diverse. All those favorite words that we have these days. Unfortunately, it's not quite accessible yet because our current system is based on the litigation model and all our public institutions support that. But a collaborative approach is an approach that supports individuals and families as they navigate a life transition. I actually am starting to call them, the collaborative process helps people evolve into their new lives in a better way. And it does that by supporting them emotionally when they're making these big decisions.
Yes, thank you. And what is the role of a financial specialist or a financial neutral within this collaborative divorce process?
So the financial specialist or financial neutral is the person that helps with the money. So in a separation and divorce, and I should mention that the collaborative process can be used for other types of life changes and transitions. It can be used if you're wanting to do a cohabitation agreement, or some of us know it, a prenup, or sometimes it's called a postnup if you're already married and want to make an agreement after you're married. Or you can also even use it in estate planning these days. Anytime you need to have a discussion about money, it's always good to take a collaborative approach because discussions about money are challenging. So specifically, what does the financial specialist do? So as a member of the team, we help clarify the financial situation for individuals and families. And mainly we do that by creating a snapshot of the financial picture for the entire team. So for the lawyers, mainly the lawyers, And sometimes, you know, a lot of emotion comes up when talking about money. Usually that's one of the issues that spouses are having to negotiate when they're getting a separation. So the pain shows up in the money. We notice that, and we can share that information to the other team members in the collaborative team to provide the support needed so that the spouses can make the right decisions moving forward. So gather and clarify the information for everybody, which cuts down on duplication of effort. We're all working off the same financial information. So that's one thing that the financial specialist does. The other thing I do often is help clarify if there's any tax consequences of a separation agreement implementation. I do the math for the lawyers because sometimes they don't always, not always their specialty.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
Can you give us a sense of, if you were not using this process, what other options families would have to clarify financial information, whether it's through mediation or litigation? What are the other options, and what are some of the pitfalls of those?
Okay. So in the typical process, clients are told they're usually given a checklist. I give my clients a checklist as well and say, here, and then I do a little bit of hand holding if they need it. But generally, if you're in another type of process, you're sent away with a checklist to build. And usually I just say, you have to provide everything you own and owe, otherwise known as assets and debt, because the traditional system just takes a look at what's there and just divides it typically. So in that kind of a process, you don't necessarily, in an alternative process, you don't necessarily get as much support with understanding what your financial picture actually means. You're just given a list, you provide the information. No one ever really typically goes through it with you. I mean, you can still do that with mediation, but you should still have someone in your corner helping you understand your financial picture if you don't. I was going to say the other thing that we do as financial specialists in the collaborative approach is we do some forecasting. So we sort of look at what's happening right now, and then we can kind of extrapolate out to the future and go, okay, if the family divides up their financial situation in this way after a bit of discussion has happened, what's that going to look like for both spouses? And actually, by doing that piece, you can see, you know, what your financial picture is going to be. You know, there's nothing more stressful than going through a separation or divorce when it comes to your finances. Usually money is a big issue in separation divorce, and there's often a sense that there's not enough in a marriage. Like there's already not enough money in the marriage. So typically, if there's not enough money in the marriage, most people that are getting divorced go, we're separated. Well, how can we possibly do this? If there's not enough money now, how are we going to split that money so that we can support ourselves in our individual homes? So where the financial specialist comes in is we start doing some forecasts and we play around with things and go, okay, let's see what this looks like. How can you do this? And by playing around with different options, things come up, ideas happen. And there's a whole team. So there's lawyers there who have been here before. There's mental health specialists to talk about how could you do this? How could you arrange your day-to-day living going forward? See what that looks like. How are we going to make the money work? And so you have idea creation in this process. And the other really interesting thing about this process is that when you don't have anything down on paper and you're in a really stressful process, essentially your mind goes to worst case scenario. And you just think, there's no way you can do this. And your mind just keeps looping, right? There's no way I can do this. I'm never going to be financially okay. The interesting thing I've noticed is once we get it down onto a piece of paper and go, this is kind of what it's going to look like. And sometimes it's not great, honestly. But the relief that my clients have when they go, oh, you know what? You're right. That's not so great, but I know how to make this work. Right. I'm starting to think, and actually I think I can do this. Right. And most clients are very resilient. And once they can sort of see, you know, I might have to give this up or or it might, this wasn't quite what I was imagining, but this is still doable. So it's that building possibilities that is the different piece of the collaborative approach that you don't get. You just don't get that in litigation or the traditional approach.
So that's really brilliant. And I like the concept of idea generation. That's something that you wouldn't get in a litigation approach, which is always about scarcity and less about abundance. So that's always what I would say the viewpoint is, because there's this idea that there's a have and a have not in a situation. And actually both parties are on both sides. It's just whichever point of view you're coming at. So in a collaborative divorce, you have one financial neutral, one financial person looking at the same numbers, trying to find a way for it to work for the family.
Yes. So that's
Right?
another benefit, is that we always just say it cuts down on duplication of effort, but we're all working with the same information. And so we hopefully all have the same sort of understanding of that information. In a traditional approach, both parties create their own schedules, and you wouldn't believe the amount of disconnect that there sometimes is, right? Because they prepare it slightly differently. Or so having that one, big picture snapshot is also really valuable.
And I imagine too that there's a lot of support for you in helping people gather the information, because both parties don't always have access to the information, and that can be make them feel very vulnerable. So your role is to, this idea that each person can go out and gather the information in a marriage is not always true.
Yes, exactly.
Right? So you're able to go to both parties and say, bring me that information.
Mm-hmm.
And then create one document for both people.
Yeah, you can fill a lot of holes that way.
Yes.
And I mean, it varies, right? Like we get clients that are in a lot of conflict with each other, right? And there's not much trust there. So sometimes we have to do a little bit more digging, get more official documents just to support the numbers. But having a financial person as well do all that gathering, I have a very good sense of if there's something missing or not, right? Because if you know how much someone makes, and you know how long they've been making that. And the other thing I help my clients do is to do a post-separation budget, and we base that off what they're currently spending. If you can see what they're spending now, so if you know what's coming in, you know what's being spent, then you can kind of see if there's any money missing. It's almost instinctual.
The numbers don't lie.
The numbers don't lie, right? So it's just nice having a third party kind of go, this makes sense, or there's something missing from this information, right? So it provides more assurance, because someone neutral, and to explain my neutrality a bit more, or any of the financial specialists, the way we stay neutral, our goal is to protect the wealth for this family. We center both the money and we center the children if there's children. So, but that's how I do it. So that's my focus. I want to help these people find a solution that protects both their money and their children, and that keeps me neutral.
Yes.
I'm not centering either client.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we can get into some of the sort of issues further, but let's talk about how a family finds or hires a financial neutral, and when should that happen in the process?
So finding a financial neutral. Well, there's not too many of us, but there's a few of us. So there's definitely go to the Collaborative Divorce BC website, and there's a section on financial specialists. There's 5 of us currently, I think that's right, Jenny, right? Mm-hmm. That are neutral. Some of the other people on the site are chartered business valuators, and they value a business. They don't typically work in the neutral role, gathering information.
They're like a financial neutral for the business that's owned by the family.
Exactly, yeah. And so that would be the first place to go. The other place that you could look, because there's only 5 of us here in the Lower Mainland, but there's a group called the Chartered Financial Divorce Specialists that work across Canada, and some of them work virtually. So that's another place that you could find them. Some people might wonder about using their own personal accountant or their own financial planner. And while I love all my accounting colleagues and financial planning colleagues, they haven't had the collaborative training. And so if you're looking for a financial neutral, it's really essential that that person has some kind of dispute resolution training. So all the financial neutrals from CDV have taken the basic interdisciplinary collaborative training. We've taken conflict resolution courses. We've all taken mediation, and we continue to upgrade every year to work on helping families resolve disputes in a consensual manner, as opposed to fighting to win. And so all the chartered financial divorce specialists in Canada as well, they are also trained in consensual dispute resolution, or as some people call it, appropriate dispute resolution.
Yeah, that's very, very helpful. And can you please talk a little bit about what you've experienced in terms of the impact of the division of assets and income can have on children and families, and how this approach might provide a better outcome?
Right. So
like where you've provided what you think could be a different solution, or you've seen anxiety be reduced, and for the families and the children specifically. Yeah.
Well, if you were to go the litigation route, traditional separation processes center the money. So it always starts with the money. They look at the money and they just try to divide it without thinking about the consequences on the rest of the family, typically.
Well, I'm going to just stop with that.
Okay.
And I want to just raise something really important, which is that the lens changes depending on whose point of view you're looking, whose point of view you're looking through. Okay. Exactly. So it's never an intentional thing. It can be unintentional. Everybody has their own story, right? Yeah. So even within the collaborative process, we see that, because in the collaborative process, both lawyers, each client has their own lawyer.
Right.
But money is black and white. It's a number. In theory, it's black and white. Yeah. But there's different lenses to see it through. So in this litigation, you're going to get two different points of view for the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, and there's scarcity and then there's abundance, versus one neutral perspective. Right. So you've got this neutral perspective that says, yes, we see that and we see that, but we also see this.
Yes. Yeah. And further to that, so maybe I wasn't.
I'm just getting more elaborate about it, I suppose.
Yeah. So in a way, okay, so sometimes the traditional process focuses on the children as well, right? But it's very much in a silo. Like every issue is put into a silo. So divide the money, divide the children, for lack of a better way of saying it, and here you go. Whereas with the collaborative approach, we look at everything together, right? So how does this financial solution impact the kids? Right. So we're looking at it more, sorry for the lingo, but more holistically. Like a collaborative approach factors everything in, tries to, in the best interests, again, of the children, the family, and the family's finances. So that's always going to lead to a better outcome, right? Because we're not just looking at the money in isolation. We're going, well, if we do it this way, how does that impact everyone else? So that's always going to lead to a better solution.
That's interesting, because that's actually full financial planning does that too. Yeah. Right? Where you're looking at it, you're looking at the taxes, and you're looking at the estate, and you're looking at the insurance. Like you're trying to make sure that everything's considered. And so really this idea of having a team helping you through a divorce, I always like to say, in a collaborative situation, you're investing in
Mhm.
your separation for a better outcome,
Yeah,
rather than it being a cost to divorce. And that can be very helpful because it's going to put you on a different footing going forward, where you've got a foundation and you know why you're where you're at. And, you know, and I, you know, an investment versus a cost. You've got a team helping you through.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so this all sounds very lovely, right? And so sometimes I think I went through my own collaborative divorce, and sometimes I think that the word collaborative scares people away, right?
Mm.
They go, there's no way I can be collaborative with that person over there, right? There's no way. So this is not going to work for me. So
Mm.
that's how this process has a different outcome for kids, is that the team provides tools, and the entire team does it. The entire team is trained in alternative dispute resolution. We've all been given the tools to help manage conflict, right? The lawyers, the financials, and the mental health professionals. And so we are all working to pass those tools on to the parents, or if not the parents, then just the individuals. And this is something that can change lives, right? Because you're learning new ways of managing conflict. And conflict is probably the thing that gets us the most in life, right? Whenever we're stressed, there's usually conflict.
So what would be a different outcome for a family that divorces collaboratively
Thanks,
that
Jen.
you would normally
You're
see?
getting me there.
Yeah,
So a
yeah,
different outcome would
yeah.
be, so if a family were to go to court, for example, to fight over the money, which is what we all sort of envision when we think of, family law 101,
Mhm.
you're going to have two parents that are really angry at each other, right? They're not going to want to hang out because they've just been fighting for the past little while. So a different outcome is that there's a possibility for the family, for the finances to be divided, but the family to stay together. So a quick example is, if you haven't been to war with your spouse, then you'll be more inclined to hang out with them at the soccer game where your kid is playing, or at the dance recital, or you might even be able to do holidays together. When I went through my divorce, we were very high conflict, and at the time I can remember thinking, there is no way I am ever going to do anything with my ex-spouse ever again. We're doing everything separate, birthdays separate, Christmas separate. Well, our collaborative process gave us the tools to learn to manage conflict. And we do Christmas together now. We do birthdays together now. And honestly, my kids, like the first time we did that, it took a little while. It took a little while for things to settle after we'd finalized everything. But the first time we had a birthday together with our kids, they basically skipped into the restaurant. They were so happy.
Mm.
So that's a different outcome.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I can see your emotion.
Yeah, sorry.
That's good. Yeah.
It
So
helps you
I can
manage your
almost
emotions.
feel somebody watching this going, oh my God, I'd never want to be in the same room as my ex right now, right? And that's what it feels like going through divorce because the conflict is so high.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the
So
stress. And the
so that
stress.
brings to the question, what families are best fit for the process and what ones aren't? It can't be right for everyone, right?
Yeah, it can't be right for everyone, unfortunately. I wish it was.
Mhm.
Um, it, I actually think it's right for most families, even if there's high conflict, even if you think you can't have a conversation with your spouse. There's ways that we can set up meetings to help navigate that. But I think everyone can learn how to manage conflict better. Uh, Unfortunately, um, it's not easily accessible, this process, right? Because it's not the approach that all our systems support, right? So you can't get legal aid for a collaborative process.
We
However,
do have a pro bono
you have,
program.
yes, I was going to say that. So there's a pro bono project run by the BC Collaborative Roster Society. So if you Google that pro bono project, you should be able to find it. And they're always looking for family participants. So you get about 7 hours of free legal help, or
Mhm.
of a free collaborative process from a coach, a financial specialist, and 2 lawyers. That's a little plug for that. So any family, I think it works for most families, but sometimes if there is family violence or someone who's really emotionally abusive, then it might not work for that family, unfortunately, just because at the end of the day, the decision belongs to the family. So if one person can never decide or just keeps stringing everyone along, then you'll never have anything finalized. So sometimes families where there's one person that just won't agree to anything, they'll have to go to court and have a judge decide for them.
That's well put. It's well put. One of the things that I like to tell my clients when I in the process, no, actually not my clients, anyone that'll listen,
Yes.
that people seem to forget is that when you're getting divorced, you have no choice but to come to an agreement. There's no other choice. You have to agree on how to divide your finances, how to divide your children, your time with your children, your community. You have to agree. So there's no point in pointing at, you can't point the finger. You have to figure out a process where you can come to a resolution.
Yeah.
And this is a process that supports that. And you have a choice. You don't have to choose this process, but you have a choice, which brings me to just talking a little bit about why people don't choose the process, because I think that there's a perceived risk to choosing this process for people.
Yeah.
That I don't really believe is true, but maybe we can talk a bit about what that might be. What is the perceived risk of this versus litigation?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that the perceived risk is kind of what I said, that they'll never get their spouse to agree and they'll just be in separation limbo forever. Right? So I think that's one perceived risk. And to counter that, I always say give it a shot, right? Because you take so much away from this process that can help you in the future anyway. And you'll figure out relatively quickly if it's not going to work, especially if you have a full team of people.
And in the process, you'll have gotten so much valuable information.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have gathered all the financial information which you can use. Yeah.
You'll understand your situation better going into it. You'll understand your options.
Yeah. So I always say give it a shot, right? And honestly, I have only ever had one file that didn't complete years ago. And I hear the same thing from many of many of our colleagues, right? Is that it actually works. It actually works. And it worked for, like, I was the first person to try this out for me in my experience, and it worked, right? I never thought we'd come to an agreement, and it did, and we did, right? And we learned so much as well. It transformed us. We are way more evolved than we were pre-separation. The other risk.
Okay. What about trust? Talk a little bit about trust, because I think one of the perceived risks is that the law will protect people. Like if you go to court, you're going to be protected from something. This idea that, well, no, you'll get your share. Do you want to talk a little bit on that? Do you have any opinion about that? Or
I do have an opinion, but so you can help me phrase it better possibly. But the lawyers in the collaborative approach, they've been trained just like any lawyer. They're there to protect your legal rights, right? So, and they know the law. They have a professional duty to ensure that you also understand the law before you sign any agreement. And honestly, I often have to convince lawyers to remember to look at the family a little bit more here, right? Because they often they just can't help it. They protect their clients. So you're gonna get you'll be protected by your collaborative lawyer for sure. They're both designed, both approaches are designed to divide the family's finances. And my family law 101, which I probably shouldn't go there, but essentially family law just does everything 50-50, essentially, right? So that's sort of the default.
High level.
Very high level, right? So, and so the way the collaborative process works is that we know, the lawyers definitely know the law, and we're playing around with solutions to make sure that the spouses get both what they're entitled to, but in a way that it works for both spouses. So again, it's a way safer process. Instead, if you go to court where high level, they'll just divide it based on, you know, the easiest way, which is usually to split things down the middle, in a way, right? So, and there's no winning, right? There's no winning in family law in court, right? You're both considered equals under the eyes of the law, and it's designed to make sure that both spouses are treated similarly from a financial perspective. I know we've all been trained on LA Law and all those TV shows where you feel like you have to go and fight in order to get what you're entitled to. But the collaborative approach is designed to make sure that happens.
Yeah, it's intrinsic to it that it's still got a level, it's got a fairness and a legal, it's legal. It is actually just formally, it is a legal process. It's just a no court approach. So you agree not to go to court.
It's designed to give the power back to the participants, right? So the whole part of it, like, so that's why financials are involved and mental health specialists are involved, and the lawyers, obviously, so that we can empower our clients to make decisions for themselves. And we do that by education, mainly education, right? And support and emotional support.
And giving them the information they need to make that informed decision, because both parties are not often as equally savvy financially. And I just want to go back to that little bit on the risks to choosing the process, because I do think they're perceived, and court often takes 5 years. So if you think you want to hurry up and get it over with, it's going to take longer if you take a court approach. Number one, right? And then that second piece is that this idea that somehow you'll get more by going to court.
Yes. That's what I was trying to say. But
meanwhile, the cost is incredibly draining. It's incredibly draining on a family, and most families will really have more of an opportunity to keep more assets by going through a collaborative approach, both because we consider the tax efficiency of how we do it, and also we give people options. And I'm going to use one example, which is that in Vancouver or in BC, where housing is so expensive, there's a lot of families that just desperately want, for example, their children to graduate in their community before they move on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're able to find ways to help support that family. That's not a traditional thing that you can do in court. A court's never going to say, no, you know, one spouse keeps that for 3 years, and they don't look at it. They don't give you options.
They don't give you options,
right?
They would just say, you sell the house, you split the money. That's the default, right?
Right. And we look at nesting in some cases. So just trying to be really, really creative, because there's a lot of guilt for parents as they go into it. And you have to be careful that you're keeping your financial stability going forward and not giving that up to support your children for the next 3 to 4 years. You know, so it's really trying to find that balance within the whole family. And we literally do this work.
Yeah.
If you can believe it. So
we do.
Okay, so let's talk about fees. All right. How much time would a family spend with you, right? You know, and what does that generally look like? And what do you see with regards to fees for the whole process, and also for using a financial person?
Okay. So I'm going to talk big picture, Because one thing about the collaborative approach to anything is that every file is unique, and it's based on the participants, and it's based on the team members. But in terms of fees, so most financial specialists charge between 200 maybe to 300 an hour, I think at the most. And in terms of and that varies, and that's usually lower than what a lawyer charges. Their fees are a little higher, for good reason, because they take some of the risk on, because they're the ones doing the final drafting of the agreement, right? So for myself, gathering information and reviewing it with the client takes about 3 to 4 hours. Okay, and then so what's that? We're getting close to $800.
Yeah, 800 to 1,000. Yeah.
And then for the financial forecasting piece, the thing about financial specialists is we're pretty good at getting things down to be efficient. I noticed that we all do this, right? We try to find ways to make the process as efficient for our clients as possible, right? So I know, Jenny, you have your templates and I have mine, where we get the clients to do a lot of the lifting and say, you know, fill out as much as you can, and then we'll go through it together. So that's how we try to, you know, shift some of the work to the clients. And it really helps, because you really get a good understanding of your financial information when you're sort of involved in gathering and collecting it. Okay, anyway, so the financial forecasting, doing the cash flow piece. So that's doing a post-separation budget. How much do you think you spend on food? How much is your housing going to be? That takes about an hour and a half to go through together. And then I'd say about 10 hours is usually the average. So if you're looking at any of the financial neutrals, it's around $2,000 to $3,000.
I would agree. I would say that's sort of the minimum, and then depending on how complicated the decision making is, or who needs more time. But again, you know, people pay upwards of $5,000 for a full financial plan, and this is giving you a financial plan to your future. And I just want to make one other point, which is that if you don't use a financial person to gather the information, then you'll be doing it through your lawyer, and your lawyer has to go through it with a fine-tooth comb as well, and they have to check it. And so you're going to be paying those fees anyway.
Yeah.
And normally you'd pay it twice, because it would be done by both spouses.
Yes, exactly. The other thing is we find ways to save money.
Yes, we do. It's very true. We do.
So I think having a financial specialist pays for itself. I would argue the same for the mental health specialists.
Yeah.
Because the thing that drives up cost on any separation is conflict, right? Is emotions, right? You know, and so the mental health professionals will help their clients manage that, right? And find a way to process those emotions that's not through the lawyer and not through the financial specialist necessarily. I help my clients process their emotions a bit, because as I said before, the emotions come up in the money, right? But if you talk to the mental health professional, their fees are also usually lower than the lawyers. They can help they help us get regulated, right? And then we can have productive conversations with both our lawyer and our financial person.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that going through a litigation process, it doesn't mean you might still not have counseling, and you might not work with your financial planner on certain things. But I think that people fall into a habit of their lawyer being their counselor and their financial planner and their lawyer. So the lawyer actually ends up with 3 roles. They're explaining the finances to them. They're counseling them through it. And you're doing that all at double the hourly. Yep. Okay. And it's not actually their expertise. The lawyer's expertise is the law and the drafting.
Yeah.
Okay. And they would agree 100%. And then their experience in dealing with conflict. And I think that within the collaborative process, the reasons the lawyers have chosen this is because they believe in conflict resolution, and through their experience, they have gotten very good at it. So yes. You're actually dealing with people that do this all the time. And so you can tell that we're really advocating for this because we believe in it. And I think, that's why we're here today, is to try to explain to you, the audience, about this opportunity and this option that isn't, it's just not well known enough. And
Yep.
and it doesn't cost more. It costs less than going to court. Okay. And it prepares you for your future and a new family dynamic.
Yeah.
So
It's an evolution.
it's an evolution. So Renee, I have a last question I ask everybody.
Uh-oh.
This
Okay.
is broader. This is about divorce.
Yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give your best friend or sister who is going through separation?
Okay. Well, I would obviously tell them to um, take a collaborative approach. Um, that would be my advice. But my advice, actually, and it's what I tell all my clients and everyone I know, is it's really stressful going through a separation divorce. We know it's supposedly the second most stressful life event that anyone can go through. I actually think it's up there. It's tied with number one, because you're losing relationships, your financial situation is taking a hit, you're worried about your future, your children, everything is changing, right? So my advice is always to go slow and steady, right? Go mindfully, get the emotional and mental health support that you need to navigate this really big transition in your life, because it's a transition, right? And we're all told to do everything ourselves and muscle through, right? Like, just but don't, right? Get support, ask for help, and ask for the right help. Don't ask the people that are going to keep you ramped up and angry, right? Talk to a professional. Start with a divorce coach. They can help you onboard into a separation process. If your spouse not involved, doesn't want to get separated, then they can help you have those conversations. So that's what I usually say, is do it collaboratively and start with a mental health professional.
Thank you, Renee. That's wonderful. Some really valuable insights.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
both love
thank you.
talking about this. We wish every family, could do things this way.
Yeah. So please follow our YouTube channel, and visit our website, collaborativedivorcebc.com. There's 2 other webinars already recorded on there. One from a wonderful counselor, Alison Jones, who's very experienced, and also from a lawyer that has a lot of experience. So, please check us out. There's always going to be more information. We're starting with the basics, and we're going to get more and more into specifics. So, and again, thank you so much, Renee, and we'll see you next time on Ask a Collaborative Professional.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Bye.
Bye.